being here today. My name is Natalia Echeverry. Along with Minnie O'Mara, we were funeral directors that helped Barbara and the entire Earl's family during this time, and it's been an honor and a privilege to get to know such a wonderful man. Before we commence this afternoon services, I want to kindly remind everybody to check your mobile devices. Let's make sure they're on silent or on mute before we commence. If for any chance we have family members or friends that weren't able to make it here today, we will be pre-recording with or live streaming through our Facebook accounts at Prayer Coral Springs. And I would love to start off our service this afternoon introducing Mr. Scott Hauser, please. Thank you.
Barbara asked me if I would just start us off with a word of prayer this morning. So we just bow our heads. Father God, I know that what Earl wants is he just wants us to have a party. And he can do that as well as anybody that I've ever known. But I know today there's a lot of sadness and brokenheartedness because we loved him and we cared about him. And he had such a big place in so many of our lives. So I just ask you, Father, that you would be with us as we grieve. You'd be with us while we're sad. You help us cry together and be there for each other. And then, Father, I also know that it wouldn't be a funeral for Earl if we didn't laugh. And if we didn't tell stories. And if we didn't just remember. And I just ask that you would give us the ability today, while we're all together, from so many decades of Earl's life, help us remember. Help us remember the stories. Bring stories to mind that just haven't been there for forever. And help some of us who weren't there listen and be able to hear and laugh. And in my mind right now, Father, I can actually hear Earl's laugh. And I just pray that you'd help us all remember today, and you'd bless us as we celebrate him. And we just trust that you'll be close. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. And this morning, it's my privilege to introduce Bill McChesney, one of Earl's lifelong friends.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Bill McChesney. I've been given the honor to speak with you today on behalf of Barbara and the family. Personally, I've been friends with Earl for over 50 years. As I look around the room, I can see many of you have known him even longer and might have some stories to tell, hopefully. I'd like to share some of my memories with you. We first met around 1970 and became fast friends. Our love of golf and our shared interest in the game brought us close together. But I found out Earl had many other talents as well as interests. As many of you know, he had a love for music. This first started out in his younger years at St. Thomas Aquinas High School. After graduating, Earl went on to his beloved Notre Dame, where he continued in the band, the Nightlighters. Throughout his life, Earl went back many times to play in the alumni marching band. Earl continued playing the saxophone throughout his life, and boy could he play. For so many years, he played with Chopper, the Five Boroughs, Joe Banana and the Bunch, the Nightlighters, and was known to jump on stage with about anyone who needed a great sax player. The most amazing part of Earl didn't read music. He didn't read it. He could read it, but it was from his soul. And it was just a natural at playing. I also learned that Earl was an amazing tennis player. I watched him play 2 guys at once, and he never lost. Who does this? Only Earl. Earl truly loves sports. All sports. We went to countless soccer, college, and professional football games. The Marlins, and of course the beloved Florida Panthers. He and I would go with Bob Tennis, Steve Rabel, and the late Fenton Ridgway. If someone mentioned going, he was always in. I suppose my strongest memories of Earl will be of some of our golf trips. Our trip, in particular, we went to Myrtle Beach, and Earl bought 2 bushels of oysters, dumped them in the bathtub, and of course covered with ice. But after about the 4th day, we had our fill of oysters. We each saw our first hole-in-one together. His, of course, was a lot cheaper than mine, because we were the only 2 in the bar when he got his. I, on the other hand, had to buy drinks for the entire bar. And of course the bar was full. But it was so much fun. In the early 80s, we took a cooking class together for about 12 weeks. This was great because it was 2 of us and 15 women. To this day, we use those recipes. And this was another great talent of Earl. The man could cook. If he came to your house, he brought food. If you came to his house, he made food. It was just incredible. Another funny story about Earl, I guess it was around 1983, and there's some pictures up here you'll see. About 10 or 12 of us went to Love Beach in the Bahamas for a long weekend. While most of us were packing bathing suits, flip-flops, and suntan lotion, Earl packed an air conditioner. This was due to the fact that the place we were staying at hadn't put the AC in yet. Well, as you can imagine, we were all making fun of him all day about his air conditioner. Nighttime rolls around, and it's time for sleep, and it's, of course, very hot. Next thing we know, all the women are sleeping in Earl's room. He definitely had the last laugh, and after that, he was known as Earl and his harem. Above all, Earl was a family man. He was a kind, generous, and loving man. He never was heard to say anything mean or bad about other people. He respected everyone for their opinion. For many years, he played Santa Claus and loved every moment of it. Earl was a husband, a father, a grandfather, an uncle, brother, brother-in-law, and lastly, a true friend. Family really was everything to Earl. And my condolences to his children, Kelly, Robbie, Daryl, Michael, Crystal, and Bobby, all his grandchildren and family members, and to the love of his life, Barbara, his wife. My hope is you all will not grieve too long for Earl, but smile at all the wonderful memories of how his life touched yours. For me personally, I lost a true friend, someone I admired and will miss the rest of my life. We are now going to open the room to anyone who would like to share a brief memory of Earl, starting with Tom Meyer. Don?
Thank you, Bill. Barbara asked me to recount the history of the Nightliners. And with your indulgence and a few notes of my own here, I'm going to try to do that for you. The Nightliners, we believe, was the first rock and roll band in Notre Dame history from 62 through 66. We started out in 62, 5 of us, in the original band. And Earl joined us the next year as a freshman. And it's a little bit of fun how that came together. Earl was the consummate saxophone player. He had 8 saxophones, which I didn't even know existed, different types, and a flute. He played all genres, from jazz to rock to pop to country to blues to doo-wop. But deferring to the real musicians that may be in this room, including Joe Beard, I understand that Joe and his family have caught the COVID bug and they couldn't be here today, but they are real musicians. He has a gifted family of musicians as well as technicians in their recording studio. Also to Chopper. I spent a beautiful time with Chopper in the Lone Star Band, the greatest country rock band in Florida. I was just doing this on a layover from Delta Airlines and had more fun. And anyway, the other true musicians in here might be the 5 Boroughs. But for the Nightlighters, and to paraphrase the Rolling Stones hit, we know it's only rock and roll, but we like it. And the Earl story at ND, Notre Dame, began in 1963. Some of the fun things about Earl was he showed up, the kid from Florida who just came from a band called Joe Bananas and His Bunch, Joe Beard, way back then. And they were featured on the cover of Life magazine as one of these bands with the great names. But Earl came to Notre Dame, and when the temperature dipped below 60, I believe around 58, here he comes walking to campus in a parka. And probably his only warmth came from doing that famous double step with the ND marching band, and they were good, they were really good. We were joined, well, let me get my notes correct here. That fall of 63, when the other 5 of us were just starting our sophomore year and we were having our first band practice, and we had reasonable success in our freshman year. We were in the one of the practice rooms at the Fortune Student Center, and we were having our practice, and in walks this nervy kid with a saxophone, 18 years old. And he sets his treasured Selmer sax down on the floor and asked if he could play a few tunes with us, maybe get in the band. Well, our bass player at that time, who predeceased Earl in 2011, was named Bob Straker. We called him the Stroke for his pool shot. But he was a little gruff with Earl. He says, well, you know, he cautioned him. He says, you know, you can play a few tunes with us, but we are a made band. Well, Earl played, and then we were made. And welcomed him with open arms. So, for 3 more years of gigs here and there in 4 different states, Detroit, Chicago, Cadillac, Michigan, St. Louis. We even managed to graduate. But, we did all those things, and it was off to the real world. And we, like I said, we actually graduated. Our first regroup was actually 1966 class 25th reunion. And I don't know, Barbara, if he actually did forego his own 25th reunion. I think you went to that too, didn't you? With the marching band trip. But he came to ours, and it was a special thing because Notre Dame actually supported us at that time. And our lead guitar, who was an exceptional design genius himself, had some posters made, the silver anniversary tour and all that. And Notre Dame supplied a wood stage to get up off the grass, a tent right beside the free beer tent, and that caused a little amount of people coming in. But, and power cords and everything. So I came from Chicago with a lot of equipment. We set up, and it was just cold turkey, no practice, and the 6 of us were there, and we played from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. in the morning, and it was just fun. Notre Dame has a reunion for every 5-year group, so even these younger groups were learning how to do the turtle and the twist and all this other stuff. We just had some fun. But after that, we all broke off, went scattered to the wind, and completed individual careers here and there. And some 15 years ago now, our lead guitar, John Houlihan, and I said, you know, we've had so much fun, we should get back together again. And I said, well, we've got to replace that bass player. And sure enough, he's here today. Ken McKay was a fellow captain at Delta Airlines with me. And when I found out he played bass, there we are. And Bob Melka, another gem that I discovered, that he was also in my class of '66. I didn't know that he had the hidden talent of hand percussion. And he's joined us and has filled out the sound ever since. We started calling the get-together, well, first it was Cinco de Mayo, because I'm a Meyer, and it was in May. But Earl had to have stints put in his heart at that time. So we said, can't do it without Earl. We're moving it to September, I believe it was. So we started calling it Meyer Fest for it. And now it's officially Meyer Fest, whether we do it whenever. And as soon as my lovely wife, Sue Ann, finds out the proposed date, she starts preparing a week's menu a month in advance. And they are well fed and we have a good time. It's like having a fraternity party. But it's in these last 15 years that we came to really appreciate Earl, his great heart, and his love of family. Many of our fests pivoted on his guaranteed participation. His signature tune with us, and I think even with the 5 boroughs as an instrumental, was called Harlem Nocturne. It was a number done by a group called the Viscounts, but Earl did it better. And when we were actually live during those 3 to 4 years, our opening and closing tune with Earl on a flute with a magical reverb echo was called Coming Home. It was by Herbie Mann at the Village Gate. And it was awesome. So for one last time, from the Nightlighters and the good Lord himself, we can request Coming Home and say, take it, Earl.
Earl's sons, and it's really great to see everybody here today. Very sad. But I did want to share a couple stories that are hopefully kind of funny. My dad, of course, was a great cook. He was a great musician. He's a great golfer. And as far as being a great cook, I was yesterday, my favorite thing that he would make for me was blue cheese dip. Maybe a tie with the boiled peanuts. And he knew that, and he'd make it for me every time I'd come down. And I tried to make it yesterday. I put on one of his tie-dye shirts and was hoping that through osmosis, the talent I would somehow absorb that. And I thought it didn't work at first. It might have, because after I first tasted it, it wasn't very good. And then I kind of grew on me after all. Hey, maybe it worked a little bit. So one story, I was not the musician my father was, but I did play the piano. I learned the piano early on, and I didn't have the interest that he did in it to do the hard work that you have to do. I just didn't want to do it. I like to goof off. I guess he had a little bit of that. But he worked harder at it than I did, and it was his thing. And back when, at one of the seafood festivals, he was playing with the low tides. The more you drink, the better they sound. That's the motto. I don't know if everybody from the low tides here. And it's just, as I understand, it's just 100 guys or so, actually, that all kind of sign up for different gigs, and 5 or 6 at a time. And so they were playing the beer tent at the seafood festival, and my dad said, you can jump on and just jump in on the keyboards with us. Dad, I haven't played in 20 years. What are you talking about? Again, it's like, it's just C, G, F, C. You got it. You'll do fine. I don't know. It's like, the more you drink, the better. We said, everyone hits a few sour notes, it's no problem. So I'm like, okay. So I start trying to play a set, and it's a train wreck. It's awful. I don't know if anyone noticed. They were either very nice or they didn't notice. I don't know. So I'm kind of, and I do know the chords, but I didn't know what chord they were on, so I'm on the wrong chord, and they're in a different key, and it was an awful train wreck. So I'm sitting there, what do I know the motto, the more you drink, the better we sound, but there wasn't enough alcohol on the beach. It would have been an alcohol poisoning situation. So for the safety of everyone there, I just started to kind of turn down the volume and let them kind of be the star. And it still sounded pretty bad, turn it down a little more. I just turned the thing off, and then I just started doing like a Ray Charles air piano thing. And I don't know if anyone ever noticed, but so that was my experience there. Another story, which is not one that I was witness to, obviously, because it was before I was born, but I think it's a funny story that he told me a number of times. When he was, I think, in junior high school, he had a problem. My dad was a problem solver. He had a problem where, I guess at his school, they didn't really have lockers. He'd bring in his packaged lunch, and they put it into a cubby hole, not a locker, or he wouldn't have the problem. And someone would steal it every day. He didn't know who it was that was stealing his lunch. So my dad, being the problem solver that he is, he had Oreos in his lunch every day, I guess, or every once in a while. You know how now they have like double stuff and triple stuff and thin mint and every kind of Oreo they come out with now. Well, my dad was a little ahead of his time, and he came up with, back then they only had one kind, right? So he came up with crunchy insect Oreo. And the way that works is you take the Oreo and you open it up and you cut out just the center part of the cream filling. So you can't tell there's an insect in there, you put the thing on. And he put it in his own lunch. Now in fairness, that's his own lunch. His lunch was stolen again, and it was never stolen after that. Really funny how that worked out. What, that I don't know about. You'll have to come up later and tell that one. Dog food in the sandwich, I don't know about that one. But really, it's just a little extra quick. And my last story, I'll tell you, the last story I wanted to tell you was the one he loved to tell about me. So obviously he had all these talents that I definitely didn't have. But he talks about the day that, according to him, I surpassed him in computer programming. Because he brought home the first computer when I was 11, way back. And he could see that I got really into it. I loved it. I jumped right in, got into programming. So a couple of years later, and he told me later, just because he wanted to bond with me, have something to do, with me that I was interested in. He and Dick Hanley, who is here today, and I he invited me to take a class at Broward Community College. Really hard programming, really assembly language, machine language, really hard stuff. And so we took this class, it was like once a week or something like that. We go to Sonny's barbecue after, which is really the fun part of it. It's really hard. I really couldn't understand it. So I remember, I think it was a final exam, and we're walking into the building for this final or something, and I'm asking him all these questions, hard questions. And he's like, Robbie, he's not really making a lot of sense. I knew enough to know that it wasn't quite making sense, his answers. He's like, Robbie, I can't give you all the answers. You're going to have to study this stuff on your own and struggle with it and learn it on your own. And I said, you don't really understand this stuff, do you? He goes, Robbie, I have no clue what's going on here. I am totally lost. I just want to hang out at Sunny Barbecue. I don't know what's going on. So that's the story according to him, although I did actually learn a lot from him in that, of where he surpassed me. So a few little dad-isms I'll leave you with, and then I'll give someone else the stage. He used to always say to us, excuses only satisfy those who give. Look at Bobby's nodding, everyone's nodding. Excuses only satisfy those who give them. But if you tried it back on him, and said, Dad, you were late. Well, there was traffic. Dad, excuses only satisfy those who give them. He would say, well, I'm satisfied. Great. Satisfied. Fantastic. The other one that all of us know is that he would say he's going to give you a whooping. He always said, I'm going to give you a whooping. You better cut that out. I'll give you a whooping. I've been counting, and the total number of whoopings so far is 0. He has never given any of us a whooping. So the one thing I'll leave you with is that he's always said to me years ago, he said, I don't know how much longer I'm going to live. I probably have 20 years to live. It's much longer ago than that. So he always kind of felt like, well, I only have so much time to live. And then when he kind of lived beyond that, I remember at the Seafood Festival too, I remember a day when he was sitting there and he kind of looked up at the sky and he's just enjoying the whole thing, the music and the food. And he just goes, this is all bonus. This is all bonus. So I'll leave you with that thought. He lived his last days as bonus. Thank you.
Tell them who you are.
My name is
Colin Earl. What story are you going to tell?
So I'm gonna.
You have to give up for Earl. We can say
This
it.
story is when me, my mommy, my sister, and my daddy went up to North Carolina to see Grandma Bob and for Father's Day to see Grandma Bob and Grandpa Al.
Did you go play in the river with Grandpa Earl? Did you play in the river with Grandpa Earl?
Yes. When I was Grandma Al. And guess who else was there? Colin and Kay.
Good story. You want to tell the baby more?
My name is Maya.
Yeah. And I love Grandpa Earl.
I love Grandpa.
grandsons. No, yeah, careful what I ask for. Oh, here it comes. Need help? Saxophone. Oh, I'm sorry, did I put you on the spot?
Wouldn't be the first time. Hey everyone, I am Chris Lancaster. Not related to Earl in any way, except that he changed my life.
There he is.
First time I really met Earl, he was dressed up as Santa. And he had food in his beard. And I was told, this is my stepdad, and later that night Barbara said, you're too old to be my grandchild, so call me Aunt Barbara. And Earl just said, call me whatever you want, I may not answer, I'm busy. And he gave out presents the rest of the night. I really don't have anything prepared. You totally put me on the spot.
I'm sorry, saxophone.
Yeah, so in middle school, I got accepted into a performing arts program playing saxophone. And I had started playing before I met Earl in earnest. And once he found out that I had chosen the saxophone, it was all over. I mean, I was at his house every weekend. We practiced for 5 hours till I wanted to punch him because I was done. But he's like, look, once you get over the hump, it becomes fun. And I finally got to that point, and unfortunately, I didn't stick with it. I too fell in love with computers and started down that path, so that's what I do today. But every time he would see me, for the last 10 years, he knows I have one of his horns at my house. He gave it to me and he just said, you just hang on to that, and if you ever feel the need, you pick that up and play. So every time I saw him for the last 10 years, he's like, hey, you pick it up and play? You ready? Like, all he wanted to do was jam. And I regret not having been able to, but you rest assured, it's going to happen. I'm going to jam with him again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. No, all right, I'm not gonna make it. Anybody else? Come on. Oh, this, go, I dare you.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Get your napkins up. She's gonna get it's okay.
Hi, I'm Crystal, his daughter. He took me on very young, from a very dark place, and wasn't afraid. He taught me strength inside of myself and to stay strong. So I'm gonna stay strong. I could hear his laugh echoing in this room. And on my wedding day, because of COVID, we kept it very small, and I always said I wasn't gonna walk down the aisle without him with me, but I did with Barbara, because it was just very short notice, so a lot of family didn't come anyways. But he did leave me a voicemail saying that he was going to be with me in spirit, and that when it comes to the part that they say who gives this man to this woman, he made sure to tell me on my wedding day that he did. He had a good life, teaching me to fish down to my steak knife, very expensive steaks. Yes.
Dancing?
Yes. Sorry, dancing. He took me to all my father-daughter dances. And when I came home crying from school, that all the children were laughing at me because I was making Uncle Earl Father Day cards. He said that they're just jealous because they don't get pancakes every Sunday. Caden, he taught the recipe for, and we're gonna start making pancakes too. So, Caden, would you like to come up here, honey? Coraline, would you like to come up here? He went beyond Dad to save the least, and I'm very proud. Very proud. Because I don't know where I would be without him.
Anyone else? Let's see, I see Kimber. Kimber Avery. Oh, wait.
Hey, let's do it together.
I don't know who
She is. I am Sue Lombard-Worst.
I am Kimber Savita.
Okay, well, I'm not related to Earl, but I'm a friend of his. And went to school with him at St. Thomas Aquinas. And when I met Earl, he always had a smile on his face. He was so funny, thoughtful, and kind. And Earl was the glue that held all our classes together because he's the one that planned the get-togethers as well as the reunions. And of course, we always had a band. And guess who jumped up on stage? Earl. And that's about it. But I will dearly miss him.
Thank you.
Hi. I used to work at the appraisal office. I worked there for, I consider it a long time, but in the lifespan, it was a short time. Barbara and I were very close. We ran the office together. And this story is kind of corny, has a little bit to do with computers, but back in the day, we did the graphs for the appraisal on the house with paper and pencil. And next thing you know, Earl brings in his computer and wants us to do it on the computer, and we're like, what? Okay, so we learned the program, because you had to learn what he put in front of you. So we started doing the graphs of the houses on the computer. A little while later, he brings in these stupid little mouses, and we're like, what the heck is that? We both said we're not using it, and every time he would come through and we weren't using it, he'd say, you gotta use the mouse. Well, look at us now, we use a mouse, we use our fingers. So he was, before his time, teaching all of us things that we didn't know needed to be learned. Bill, you stole my story about the AC. I was there.
Tell it again.
It was very funny that his luggage contained just the receiving it. He didn't care about anything but the bathing suit and the AC. But we had a really, really good time. I was a part of Earl's wedding with Barb, and they were a huge part of my wedding. I remember I was young and I got married in Clearwater Beach, and as you know, there's lots of bars in Clearwater Beach, and everybody there was young and wanted to just go party. And people started to leave the wedding. And I must have had a face on, because Earl said, honey, what's wrong? And I said, they're leaving, and I still have my garter on. He got everybody back into my wedding, and we finished the bouquet and the garter, and the night ended very well. I will dearly miss him.
Thank you. Did you forget something?
She's back.
I would like to say one more thing, just because I know that he always said it and would be so happy to hear me say it. And that he would ask me, what color are my eyes? And I would always say, brown like a girl's.
Yes. Anybody? Come on. Come on, Joe. Get in line.
I'll talk
It's
from
okay.
over
Go
here.
ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
Cheryl.
Okay.
And Earl's ahead of us. You see, when we were in school, we were the C group. Nathan, Chase, Jeanette. So we were together all the time. And when I got that text message, right away at the first thought, I said, what are we going to do? He's our leader. What are we going to do our next reunion? Oh, he was just great fun. We played tennis. I was horrible. Fantastic. Yeah. Remember, did I poke you in the back? Did you poke me? Earl? Yeah, you did, yeah. And I think I remember that sandwich. Someone said that was dog food. I don't know. I wasn't there. I know I heard this commotion going on. I don't even know who got it. You know who got it? Yeah, really. Okay, bye-bye, Earl.
Thank you, Joe. You're up. You're up, baby.
Hi everyone. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Fenton Ridgway. My dad and Earl were friends for as long as I've been alive. I know my dad considered Earl to be his best friend, and just, a lot of all of my memories growing up, it was, we were doing things together with our families and going through, and everyone's talked about a lot of, Earl's commitment to his family and his, and his love for taking care of him, and everyone knows about that. But the things that I really remember about Earl, his sense of humor. Earl was he could make anybody laugh in any situation. It didn't matter what, and I just remember some of the funniest moments were always Earl finding the right quip to say to any situation and making it go on. And he was just somebody who always made whatever you were doing better when he was around. And he was just such a generous person too. And, growing up, a lot of times when, Earl and Barbara would go on vacation or go places, he'd ask me to come over, hey, can you watch the dogs and the cats? And every time I would come over, before they would go, he'd take me around the house and show me these different things he wanted me to take care of. And one of those stops was always he'd take me into the freezer and he'd show me the pack of steaks and all the different sausages and different things that he bought specifically for me for the time while they were gone, so that I could have great food to eat while I was there watching the house. So it always felt like, even though I was there taking care of their animals, it was like I was on my own separate little vacation while they were gone. And it was always a wonderful time for me. Sometimes they'd get home and I wouldn't want to go back to my house, because it was just, like I said, he made sure that, like I said, it felt like he was doing me a favor by letting me come over and take care of it. So I will always remember that. And Earl just did so much for, my dad and our family over the years, being that we knew him for so long. And, I think it would take an entire lifetime for us to ever, you know, pay back all those things that he did for us. And
Tell the
he did-
Disney story.
yes, and you know, I don't know that he even thought twice about it. That's just the kind of man that he was, and just the kind of giving heart that he had. And since I do want to give at least one story, and this is a long time ago, but I do remember when I was turning 5 on my 5th birthday, we all went on a trip to Disney World, and if you see there, I know there's some pictures
It's
up
coming
here.
up right now, I think,
I
in a minute.
some pictures are coming right now. We went to one of those dinner and show things
Not yet.
called the Hoop-Dee-Doo Review. And it's one of those things where they get audience participation, and because it was on my birthday, they actually pulled me up out of the crowd, and they pulled Earl from our table, and they gave us parts in the little show that was going on. And I got to go in and do on the stage, and for the big finale, one of the most memorable things, and if someone asks me what is the funniest thing I've ever seen, this is definitely up there on that list. They put Earl in a ballerina tutu with little fairy wings and had him come out on stage and do a fun little fairy dance with a wand to a song and just dance. And I remember the entire restaurant was in tears laughing so hard. And Earl was just such a great sport about it, and it was just such a memorable moment. And it's like I said, I mean, it was my 5th birthday, and I still can remember to this day as to how special that night was. So I just wanted to, you know, say thank you to Earl for putting such a great moment like that in my life, and to share that with everybody else. So thank you guys.
Anybody? Oh, God, here he goes.
You asked for this. Hi,
Hi.
I'm Bobby. Earl is my uncle and also my dad. He and Barbara raised me from very, very young. I was definitely the troublemaker of me and my sister, even though she probably caused more trouble. I, long term, was more trouble overall. I would say that probably started when Uncle Earl started taking me to sports games. He took me to every sports game all the time. Like, that was our thing, was going to sports games together. And while I never watched the sports game, he would hand me $20 when we got there, and $20 every time I went back to check on what he was doing. So while he loved watching the game, I loved roaming around and causing mischief in the lobby and getting into the club section and ordering, like, I don't know, cheesecake, and be like, where did you get this? And then be like, I told them I didn't know where my family was, and they let me in. And I think that's what started my mischief, was him being like, here's another 20, go get me cheesecake. Okay, great. But he was always there for me, no matter what I did. I made many mistakes, and through all of those mistakes, he has always been the support for me and been behind me with Barbara, being like, you did that wrong, we got you, but you're in trouble. And like, I was like, hey, I'm not in trouble. But they definitely shaped me to a better person, and I wouldn't be who I am without him having raised me, and without Barbara. They were my parents, and it was an honor to be a part of their family as much as they brought me and my sister in.